Last year, the Illinois legislature passed controversial legislation that will permit the practice of fracking in Illinois. The legislature charged the Illinois Department of Natural Resources with promulgating rules on how fracking was to be done. These rules were released over the holiday season last December in 2013, and public comments were gathered at 5 hearings across the state. To date, more than 20,000 comments have been submitted to IDNR. If the other hearings were any indication of what it was like in Chicago, the people of Illinois clearly do not want fracking at this time, if ever. Joining us today to give us a current update of that topic are Dr. William C. Rao, Professor Emeritus at Illinois State University and spokesperson for the Illinois People's Action and Fair Economy, Illinois. Georgia de la Garza of the Shawnee Hills Hollers, and Dr. Lora Chamberlain with Frack Free Illinois. We welcome you all to Community Forum.
Thank you.
On this
Good
cold and chilly Chicago morning.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for braving the cold. I want our audience to know that you suffered greatly getting there. So, all right, we're going to have a real short time here, but we got to hone it down. So, quick, down and dirty. What is fracking, and what problems do you see it represents for Illinois? Let's start maybe with you, Bill.
Fracking puts together several drilling techniques to go after what anyone with a sane mind would say is junk hydrocarbons. Namely, a well is drilled, a vertical well is drilled down to where you have a hydrocarbon pay zone. And then directional drilling is used to drill through a lateral member or seam that has either gas or oil. That seam is then perforated. Volumes of fluid are then pumped into there under very high pressure where they fracture the rock. That fluid is then just pulled out along with the hydrocarbons as well. And this can be used for gas, natural gas liquids, or oil.
Mm-hmm. So this is not a new process, but...
It is. What we have now, the industry says, oh, we've been doing this since 1947. That's true. We've been flying airplanes since the Orville and company have been flying planes. No one would equate their plane with a 777 Dreamliner. And so there has been a fundamental transformation in how hydrofracking works, starting in the 1990s with Mitchell Energy in Texas. Mm-hmm. So this is a new beast, and a much more dangerous and destructive beast than the typical old-fashioned vertical fracking of, say, an oil well.
Because it's going horizontal.
And not only that, it's in some cases using vast volumes of water. You have to differentiate different kinds of fracking. And Illinois is going to be quite different from, for example, from Texas or Pennsylvania. But a big slick water frac can use anywhere from 3 to 8 million gallons of water, 15 to 40,000 gallons of chemicals, and 750 to 2,100 tons of silica sand.
And where is this largely taking place?
It's taking place all throughout the United States. It started in Texas, in the just west of Dallas. Then it spread to Haynesville, and then to Fayetteville, which is in Louisiana, then to Fayetteville in Arkansas. It's taking place now on a fairly large scale in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and also in North Dakota for oil, and the Eagle Ford formation in southern Texas for oil. Mm. So what's happening right now is the drillers are getting killed on dry gas. They're losing money on it. And so the number of rigs going for dry gas, which is pure methane, is dropping like a rock. And those drilling rigs are going for natural gas liquids and for oil, where they have a much higher premium.
Laura, you wanted to...
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to just back up. And the situation with fracking is that it's the industrialization. Mm-hmm. It just takes so much water. They're drilling so far horizontally. That was the key technology piece that they needed, was to be able to drill horizontally, 1 mile, 2 mile. We've even heard of a 10-mile horizontal part of the well, and that they're drilling under rivers, under lakes, under aquifers, and it takes so much pressure and so many gallons of fluid and so much chemicals to get through that wellbore all the way down that shaft that it involves thousands of trucks. It involves pressure of some, I've read, between like 7,000 and 9,000 psi.
They can go up to 14,000.
And 14,000 psi. It's different in every shale. So it's just this massive industrialization that just like moves into these farming communities, and they are being completely disrespectful of people's property, of their livelihoods, of their children, and they're moving these fracking rigs and these wells, close to where people live. The fracking itself can cause small earthquakes, in the realm of about 2's magnitude, but there's so much water, so much toxic water and chemicals that flow back from this. They have to dispose of it someplace, so they're injecting it deep in Class 2 injection wells, and that causes serious earthquakes. In Oklahoma in 2011, there was a 5.7 earthquake that was stimulated by a Class 2 disposal well where they were shoving under pressure all of this oil and natural gas waste, and it damaged 14 homes and injured 2 people. So we are at a level that is so much different than what we've ever been at, just drilling those vertical wells to
So it's
get
clearly not a
pools.
benign process.
It's not a
It's
benign
not
process.
And you can look at what's happening with the induced, they're called induced earthquakes. They're man-made earthquakes. They typically run between 3 and 5. And they've been shooting up like this. They've been increasing very rapidly, and it's paralleling the growth of fracking. Because they have to get rid of all this. The big problem is, what do they do with all this wastewater? It comes back hypersaline. It's 5 to 15 times saltier than salt water. It'll sterilize soil. It'll kill trees. It will contain barium, arsenic, lead in lethal amounts. And then a lot of it's radioactive. The average oil field brine reading in Illinois is 1,000 picocuries per liter of brine that's coming out from an oil well. That's 200 times above the EPA maximum level for drinking water. And they got to get rid of this stuff. And one of the things they do is they dump a lot of it on roads.
So now you're getting to where we need to go here. Is it's happening in Illinois. Where and what do the people down there say about that? Let's go to you.
Thank
Georgia.
you. Being from Southern Illinois, first I want to say that, going around over this last year talking to a lot of oil people and gas people who live and work in Southern Illinois and have been doing oil for 50 years, we have to change the word. We've got to stop saying fracking, because people, of course, have been fracking for a long time. We have to put industrialized fracking. We have to start using that word so people understand that's different. What does that mean? We have to start educating people, and that's what we've been busy doing in Southern Illinois now. In Southern Illinois, we are 100% bent on fracking. We live on the Wabash seismic zones. We have the New Madrid seismic zone. And plus we have the 2 rivers, the Ohio and the Mississippi. They meet with the Cache River and huge watersheds and rivers. And it's going to be, it's not if it's going to happen, it's just when it's going to happen with fracking. There's so many variables in industrialized fracking. That's our fear, that it's bound and determined to happen.
So how do folks down there deal with that issue of, okay, we need economic development because the economy in Southern Illinois is in the tank, yet at the same time, we're hearing the horror stories that this is not exactly a benign process. What's the response in Southern Illinois?
A lot of counties actually are looking forward to fracking coming in. They don't understand it. They're coal miners and they're farmers, and they haven't been educated on fracking as. They haven't been reading the news like we have on fracking and keeping on top of it. Our local media is just now starting to get in to exposing, what has been happening state to state. So right now you go into the counties. I was just in Saline County the other day and at a county board meeting, and they got up and they said, well, how about fracking? And this gas guy got up and he goes, oh, it's great. It's going to bring jobs here and, it's awesome. Now, they are talking about that there is an issue of drilling there. They have been doing practice drillings, and there's a water issue there. And then we have our beautiful Shawnee Forest with endangered species. And, we're just looking at every angle we can to stop the fracking, to ban the industrialized fracking.
I understand there's some counties that have actually put it on the ballot, and they
have.
are rejecting fracking as well.
They have. Johnson County has, something that we really want to do, and what we're going into the communities and counties, townships, municipalities doing for the people to take their own control and write their own laws. And this is working. This has been working. They're getting a ban on in March is going to be their vote. And they have 1,200 people, which is a lot in that community that have came forward. It's a majority. You have little communities like Alto Pass, who's banned fracking, and all throughout the vineyards. You know, we have 126 vineyards down there. It's a huge agricultural area. Plus our beautiful Shawnee Forest, you know, with Garden of the Gods and Bell Smith Springs, and it's a huge eco-tourist place. And one of the things that we're doing in the spring is we're going to have an energy conference, and we're going to be trying to introduce new energies to Southern Illinois. We have to think of this in a very long-term plan.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I
Now
would like
let's
to
talk
talk
about
about.
something disgusting. Law. You know, the old saying, the things you don't want to see made are law and sausage.
Yeah.
In 2013, the legislature passed a law which was in the press. It was supposed to be the strongest set of laws and regulations in the country. Was it?
No.
No.
And
nowhere
if
near.
not,
No.
what's
Nowhere near.
wrong with it?
Yeah.
Let me
Take it away.
start, first of all, with the definition. The industry was quite successful, I think, and probably one of the biggest confidence games in recent Illinois political history. The definition of fracking in that law will probably lead to the exclusion of most of the hydrofracked wells in Illinois. And that means that all these rules, which are bad rules, won't even apply. So there'll be practically no protections at all.
And the excise tax and
Yeah. And so-
everything about that bill will
Well, you're
not apply.
getting ahead of the audience on this one.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Let's stay with the legislation and then we'll go to the rules.
Okay, so what will happen is this. They have three stipulations in the law that are loopholes. You have to have at least 300,000 gallons of fluid. You have to use a proppant, which is typically silica sand. And your lateral well bore has to be at least 80 degrees to the vertical. Okay, all three of those are loopholes. You can have a 5,000-foot lateral and use a gelled water frac and get in under 300,000 gallons. That's probably how most oil wells will be done, so they will be exempt. Most of the fracking for gas, when it becomes commercial, will probably use 100% nitrogen fracs because a lot of the New Albany field is shallow, it's close to the surface, so they have to use nitrogen. It doesn't use a proppant. They also use what are called toe-up lateral wells because they're low-pressure wells, and to drain the water out, which is with the gas, it's called formation water, they drill it, here's the heel, they drill it like this, that's going to be less than 80 degrees. They've got three loopholes for the gas wells. So all of this stuff goes. Rather than paying 3% excise, they'll pay 1/10 of 1%. Rather than a $13,500 permit fee, they'll pay probably $250. Rather than a $50,000 bond for patching up afterwards, they'll pay $5,000. It just goes on and on
And
and on.
no water testing.
No water
nothing.
testing,
Yeah.
no setback worth
Yeah.
anything.
So let me ask a question here, and then I'm going to go to you, Lora,
Right.
in a second. Last year, one of the arguments we heard against what was called a moratorium was that Illinois needs the revenue and that perhaps fracking would be a source of the revenue.
Nonsense.
And for a while, Speaker of the House Madigan was on board for the
That's
moratorium,
nonsense.
but eventually went over. So now what you're saying is in a situation like this where there's so many loopholes, there's not going to be any revenue for
That's
Illinois.
exactly right.
The
So
initial
are
bill-
we saying here that Mike Madigan got rolled by the industry?
Yes,
He got
he
taken
got
by
rolled.
the industry?
He got
Yes.
conned. This was a very successful
This could be a
sting
first, and I'm glad we captured it on
This was
TV.
a very successful sting operation,
100%.
and yeah, they just pulled off. Those guys were laughing all the way to the bank.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
You know,
And the big greens were right in. They thought
Yes.
that they could
So let's
fool
go back to that a
the
minute, Laura,
industry.
because you were involved with the negotiating process
Yes.
with the legislative component of this
Yes.
before we got to the rules.
Yes.
What went on?
So the industry did something very remarkable in this state, and that is, they did it through Speaker Madigan's office, and that is that they got the big greens, the NRDC and the Environmental Law and Policy Center and Faith in Place, a big religious organization, and a couple others to sit at the table with the industry. The industry knew what they were doing with this loophole. Literally 2/3 of the wells will not even have to comply to this law at all.
it may be larger than that.
It may even be larger than that. And they knew exactly what they were doing. We begged the negotiators for the environmental groups to stay out of the room because we knew that their lawyers were, quite skilled at this game. of negotiation, and they may not be so skilled. We literally told them.
Yeah.
The
that
industry lawyers.
The industry lawyers are absolutely brilliant on how to finagle around these, all this legislation and all these regulations. And the big greens, and so we were saying, delay the negotiations. And one of the reasons why we wanted a moratorium was because we knew they were being snookered. So we were saying, there's so many issues about fracking. There's the water contamination, the air pollution, the earthquakes. I tell people that it causes everything but locusts. And what we really needed was...
More like Japanese beetles.
Yeah.
Exactly. What we really needed
Lots of
was
those
an
down
investigative
south.
task force with independent scientists writing this legislation. Not the oil and natural gas companies. They're going to corporations. They'll write in everything that they want.
David, I mean, I find this really offensive. Madigan and company sent a bunch of naive, idealistic young kids in to negotiate with guys that eat headhunters and cannibals for lunch.
That's exactly right.
They needed a
Exactly what
mafia
happened.
hit squad to back
Yes.
them up.
That's
They didn't
exactly
have
right.
anyone that had any technical expertise.
Yeah.
They thought that they were going to be fracking the Marcellus shale field. This is Illinois. It's a different beast. You have to know the geology of this shale field to negotiate with the oil and gas industry. They didn't have that
Absolutely.
expertise.
Now that
Science.
raises an interesting point. We're going to move from the legislation to the rules, which were spawned by the legislation. Occurred during the holiday season of 2013, which was considerate. They had 5 public hearings. I attended the one in Chicago and was floored when testifier after testifier got up there and pointed out that within the documentation of the rules, it point blank says that no scientific studies were used in the creation of these rules. I mean, I don't know, did they make it with tarot cards, or how did DNR
we are
craft these
so
rules?
angry with them. We're so angry with them. We went to the IDNR and we brought them names and phone numbers of independent scientists from across the country who would answer questions for them, okay? Because we knew that the IDNR IDNR knows geology. They knew more what they were facing. But they still didn't, there's all this technical stuff about this industrialized fracking. So we asked them to please contact these independent scientists and at least have consultations with them. They didn't call a one. And one of them that we brought to them, we asked them to contact, was Dr. Hamburger, who is the world's foremost expert on the Wabash Valley earthquake zone. Nada. They didn't even contact him. We have been sold out. The residents in this state have been sold out by every level of our government. The governor, Speaker Madigan, our reps and senators, because this is a dangerous process and they needed to do an investigation.
And what is the governor's position, since you mentioned
Yeah,
it?
the governor
What is it?
ran around his mansion screaming that he was worried about fracking. He had seen Gasland, apparently, and which is a very famous movie. You can go to gaslandthemovie.com.
It's online.
And online. And so he was, very worried about fracking. And then when they started, the oil and natural gas companies started to come in and talk about the jobs, right? The 1,000 to 47,000. It's going to be more close to 1,000, okay? And they're going to be toxic, temporary, deadly jobs. 138 workers died last year on the frack fields. It is 8 times more dangerous than any other job in America. So he was concerned for a couple months, and then I guess ching, the excise tax just kind of made him think otherwise about this process. They think they're going to get rich on this, but they have been snookered by the industry, and Illinois is going to suffer.
Okay.
The 2 things, David. The rules are so bad that the Greens that worked on the negotiations were really betrayed. They were able to get some things in the law that have some teeth in them. All of those were removed during the rulemaking, and the Sierra Club, for example, has joined us to oppose these rules now. So they've seen that these rules really are a disaster.
So let's go through the process of what the rulemaking is. Now, we've had the first set of rules that were promulgated by DNR. I understand there's going to be a second draft of that for public comment. Is that correct?
I don't think a public comment.
What happens is the second draft will go to JCAR, and JCAR has 40.
What is JCAR?
That's a Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. There are 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats, evenly split between the House and the Senate. They have the power, they seldom use it, they have the negative power with a supermajority vote of 8 to 12 to say to the DNR, these rules are so bad, we're prohibiting you from filing them with the Secretary of State, so the whole law is put on hold. And so they're in that position where they can reject the rules should they wish to do so. What will happen is there'll be a process of negotiation when the DNR gets the revised rules over to them. Groups will have the opportunity to respond to JCAR to those rules. And we have no idea where it's going to go from then.
You say groups, can individuals also respond?
Yeah,
I think so,
Yes,
yes.
individuals.
Yeah.
We're asking people to write letters to every member of the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. You can Google it, and the names will come up. And write a letter to them and ask them to prohibit the rules. And we talk about a dirty dozen. And that is 12 things. There's a dirty 30. There were literally hundreds of things about these rules that were egregious.
Okay.
But we are absolutely asking people to write their letters starting now to the JCAR members, ask them to prohibit the rules. And all of this is up on our Facebook page, which is Frack Free Illinois on Facebook.
You wanted to comment on that?
I do. First and foremost, in Southern Illinois, we reject the Regulatory Act and the bill because we reject fracking. So we think that the Greens shouldn't have sat down at the table in the first place, that if Illinois, Southern and Northern Illinois would have came together and sat at the table and talked about this in the first place, that maybe we wouldn't be in this position right now. There is a split and a divide between the Greens right now. Because of the hurt of those groups sitting down at the table. In Southern Illinois, we have kicked the oil and gas industry out on our own before by being highly organized and well educated, and we feel like we're just going to do that again. We're going to depend on ourselves. Some facts here that are being missed. Give an example of Texas roads. They're in the revenues. Like in Illinois, you have 20% poverty going on in some of those communities, and most of those communities, because the coal mines have been shut down, very few are working right now. Give an example of a road degradation, which is a major issue. Like in Texas, there was, fracking brought in a revenue of $1.2 billion, and when they pulled out and left, there was $4 billion in damage that needed to be done. How are the counties in Southern Illinois going to pay for those roads? It's impossible. The food pantries are over, the lines are so long now.
In the process, let's say that things move on, which agency would be in charge of actually monitoring fracking in Illinois?
It would be the IDNR.
It would be
The Illinois
Yes.
Department of Natural
And
Resources.
what is their staffing capability in terms of doing that?
They have been staffed up, but what we can say from earthwork study in other states is no state has been successful in regulating this industry or even coming close. And one of the problems is they're understaffed. They lack the regulatory tools to actually get the attention of companies. And we can show one of the weakest parts of these new rules is there are no sanctions in there that count. There is nothing in the rules that will get the attention of these oil companies and get them to stop.
So to summarize, we have a situation where there were bad legislation to begin with, rules that are
Worse.
totally full of loopholes.
Yeah.
And even if it happens, we have agencies that couldn't possibly regulate or supervise in any meaningful, protective public health sense
That's
the
absolutely
operation.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
exactly
That's
And
exact
to top
problem.
it off, Mike Madigan gets rolled and we get no income coming into the state
Yeah.
coffers.
Well, we're going back to Springfield.
Okay.
We're going to
And
go back
I-
to
Well,
Springfield.
we only have a
And-
few minutes
yeah.
left, so I
Yeah.
want to go one by one here because
Yeah.
you are now the emperor or empress of the universe. What do you want done on this process? And let's start with you, Georgia.
We're bringing, we want science put on the table and health put on the table. And it seems to me that is what's in reality going to get a ban on fracking. We are going for the ban 100%. That's what we want.
Science, study,
Health.
ban.
Yes, yeah, pre-legacy, people do your pre-legacy. Test your water, test your soil, prepare.
And there, you have a website where people can look and
Yes,
see.
absolutely.
Yes, at the end of the show, there will be contact information where people can reach you.
Right.
Bill?
I would want a moratorium for exactly the same reason, to bring independent scientists in to look at this situation. And after looking at Illinois, we have probably one of the most dangerous states in the country for fracking. And they'll take one look at this and say, you'd be out of your minds to frack Illinois. With
Why do you say dangerous?
Pardon?
Why do you say dangerous?
First of all, a lot of the prime fracking areas lie in the 100-year floodplain.
Okay.
Okay, so you just look at what happened in Colorado with the flooding there. Secondly, we have both the Wabash Valley, the New Madrid seismic zones that are capable of generating magnitude 7 earthquakes. And so here you have a earthquake zone and a flood zone that overlap. That means that a good part of that flood zone is also what's called a liquefaction zone, which means that when you have an earthquake, the water table is so close to the surface, you've got sand soil, that you have water literally blow out of the ground from the earthquake. Now you're going to put frack pads in that area? You got to be nuts.
So bottom line for you is moratorium?
Moratorium.
Okay. Laura?
And we're going back to Springfield. We absolutely want a ban on fracking. There's no question about that. And a huge scientific investigative task force. We've written a bill for that. And but we do understand that the political situation in this state is very, very difficult. Many of the southern reps and senators want fracking, and they're drooling at the mouth for this process to begin. So we are also coming in with smaller bans, like a ban in the earthquake zone, a ban in the Mohammed Aquifer, a huge aquifer in central Illinois that is the drinking water for over 800,000 people. And a ban in the floodplains, and investigate this and investigate this. We're coming in with quite a few bills. So we've already had discussions with some of the reps and senators, and some of them are going to be open to it because we're so proud of all of our Illinois residents for showing up to these hearings, to putting in all of these thousands of comments
40,000.
into the IDNR. Yeah, we made it. It was a record.
Okay.
It was a record at the IDNR.
Yeah.
So we're so proud of you Illinois residents for fighting back, and you have scared the bejesus out of the Illinois reps and senators, and we are going to use that to try to pass some of this legislation, and hopefully it's the total ban.
That's right.
And if not the total ban, then a ban in the earthquake zone. Please don't knock some
So what can
people's
people
homes
do?
down.
We only have about a minute left. What can people do to get involved?
Yeah.
What can they do?
I think that there's one thing that needs to happen soon, and no group's taken it up yet, and I hope some group will, and that's a Sandra Steingraber pledge of resistance, a nonviolent pledge of resistance to sign up, to engage in nonviolent civil disobedience and be willing to go to jail if necessary, because I think in the final analysis, that's the only thing the politicians are going to listen to. If we've got 10,000 people that can sit in front of Madigan's office and the governor's office, this frack train will never leave Springfield.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, and that's what we've been doing in Southern Illinois, training every week. We've got groups coming in. It's amazing. We have people that are in their teens to their 80s coming in and being trained in nonviolent direct action.
I want to encourage people that we're not done with lobbying either.
Yeah.
So if
we
you're
have a chance.
If you're interested in lobbying and you want to come down to Springfield, we're going to have lobby days, and we want to educate people on all of the aspects of fracking so that they can talk to the reps and senators. I really encourage you to contact us at Frack Free Illinois on Facebook. We are gearing up to go back down and sit with these reps and senators, and we have more reps and senators in our corner this year than we did last year.
All right, we're going to have to end it on that note. I want to thank you for coming up to the frozen north for the show. Community Forum is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, please call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Community Forum every Saturday at 8 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Dave Kraft. I thank you for joining us, and stay well, everyone. Thank you again.